We have a situation. I made a really big mistake on my video last week and now I need to fix it. Okay, so last week I was working on this jacket. I did a refashion, making it shorter into a bomber jacket and putting trim on it. If you haven't seen it, I will link it up here in the card. And there was a part where when I trimmed the length off, the pockets then became like super short. So I would have had to move the pockets up quite a ways to get like a pocket that you could get your hand in and out of. So I cut an opening so that I could sort of like go in and investigate, and there's a few reasons that I chose not to use those pockets. Number one, the plaid fabric is really super light and does not take kindly to being stitch picked. So I knew if I took the top stitching off of the pocket that it probably, like, it was not going to be forgiving. You were going to see that I had taken a seam out of there. Number two, moving the pockets up where they were, which is right on the side seam, would have like put them in a weird spot to use them. So I'm probably like not a super flattering spot either, because it would mean, yeah, it wouldn't have been good. It wouldn't have been comfortable. It wouldn't have been cute. So I didn't do it. And I thought, no worries. There's 2 other pockets here. I'll be fine with that. I spent the whole weekend taking the kids to the park, going out for walks, out with my family, doing this. I need somewhere to put my hands. I didn't think about that. So, I have this leftover fabric that I cut off of the bottom, and we're gonna make some patch pockets out of that. So, let's get to it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off the old seams from the portion of the jacket that I took off, just so I can separate the plaid from the lining. I am going to line the pockets, but I don't want all the bulk of that batting. And as you can see, we definitely have enough fabric to make 2 pockets. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at the jacket for any ideas considering design. As you can see, the plaid on the bodice of the jacket runs vertical and horizontal, but on the pocket it's diagonal. Also, they have these cute little mitered corners at the bottom, so I'm going to take all that into account when I make my pattern. Here's my pattern. As you can see, I've copied those mitered corners. And when I place my pattern, I'm going to make sure that I place it with the plaid running diagonally. Now I'm just going to zip around it with my rotary cutter, and I'm adding 1/4 inch seam allowance. I didn't add it to my pattern just because when I was playing around with it, I wanted to be able to place it, like hold it up to the jacket and get a really true idea of what size the pockets were going to be. Now this fabric looks the same on both sides, but there is definitely a right side and a wrong side in texture. So I made sure when I placed my pattern on the fabric that when I did each one, I flipped the pattern over. So make sure you keep that in mind if you're making pockets that have to be mirror images of each other. I'm going to cut some lining, and I'm just doing this because, like I said, that fabric's really light and the weave is really weak. So I don't want shoving my hands in my pockets or putting keys in my pockets to make the pockets fall off. I want them to have a lot of wear. Here's the trim that I had when I did the first refashion. It's 4 inches wide, so I'm just going to cut that in half. And now I'm going to take my pocket, now I'm going to take my plaid and my lining fabric and just pin it together so that things aren't shifting around on me. And I'm going to run a basting stitch quite close to the edge, and that's just going to secure everything so that it's easier to work with. Now I am sewing on the trim to the opening of the pocket, and I'm just leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance and running that through on a straight stitch. As soon as I'm done that, I'm going to pull the pins off and open up that seam so that I can top stitch over it, and that'll just give everything a really nice clean look. Now I'm going to fold over a 1/4 inch all around the edge of my pocket, and I'm starting with the long edges first. I'm not worrying about the corners right away. I'm going to get a really good crease on those long edges, and then I'm going to worry about folding the corners in. And I'm actually going to measure those miter corners because I want them to all be the same. This is a really easy way that things can start to look a little bit off kilter, is if you don't quite fold them the same and they wind up just a little bit different. So it takes 2 seconds just to measure them and make sure that all of those miters are the exact same width, which in this case was 1 inch. Now I'm going to place my pockets, and I'm going to pin both of them and really have a good look at them together and make sure that I'm happy with the overall placement and that they line up with each other and with the garment. The bottom was a little bit finicky to pin on because we put that trim on the bottom, which is an elastic trim. So I kept trying to want to bunch up on me as I was pinning my pocket on. Now I've got both my pockets on, and I took my measurements from the edges of the garments and the pockets when I placed them. But as you can see, when you look at the distance on how they line up with the edges of the upper pockets, they don't line up. And this is the first time I realized that the top pockets don't match. One is a 1/2 inch farther away from the snaps than the other one. I don't know how I missed that before, but I'm going to keep the bottom pockets symmetrical because it's going to be more comfortable when I'm walking around with my hands in them. And I don't see the point in having them offset the way the top pockets are. So they're just going to be how they are. Now I'm going to just use a straight top stitch, and I'm going to go around the edges of the pockets. I'm keeping it fairly close to the edge so that I'm, again, keeping in line with the design of the top pockets that were already on the jacket. And this is the very last step. Well, here we go. So much better. So much better. Thank you so much for sticking with me to the end of the video. I really appreciate you watching more than you will ever know. Make sure you do all the things, like, share, subscribe, and we will see you next week. This time for sure to start spring and summer sewing, because I'm pretty sure I don't need to do anything else to this. Spring and summer sewing next week. See you there.